The course is Contemporary Issues in Agriculture, and the topic is Ethical Approval in Product Development and Utilization. Class, before we start learning about ethical approval in research, product development, and utilization, I want us to think about why ethics matter in real life. Whether you're writing a project or producing food, ethical consideration is very important because it helps to protect people. It's about being honest, being transparent. People know exactly what they are consuming or what they are getting themselves into. It's about building trust. But when people cut corners, there are consequences. And unfortunately, those consequences can be really deadly. It can even destroy reputations. And that's why the issue of ethics is very, very important. Now, let's look at some unethical actions or situations to really get understanding of why ethics matters. Okay, let's look at toxic syphilis study that was conducted in the US between 1932 and 1972 as an example of unethical action in research. The study was actually conducted to be able to track the full progression of a disease called syphilis. Now, you can imagine yourself as a patient and you were told that you'll be getting health care for free, believing that indeed you are getting free health care. But in reality, the doctors were just secretly watching how the disease is getting worse without giving you the required treatment. That is exactly what happened to a number of African American men in the US. There was no informed consent, there was no transparency, no honesty about the research. The participants were not aware of what they were subjecting themselves into. And unfortunately, since the researchers did not provide any effective care, some of the men died, some went blind, some went insane, others experienced severe health problems, because the syphilis was not treated. So you can imagine how terrible people can be just to attain their goal, subjecting people to such deadly acts. Okay, there was also another experiment that was sponsored by the US government, and then in 2010, President Barack Obama and other federal officials apologized for carrying out this experiment. The experiment was carried out in Guatemala, and it was a study that was conducted between 1946 and 1948. And in this study, almost 700 men and women who were prisoners, some were soldiers, and some were mental patients, were intentionally infected with syphilis, and this was done without their knowledge. It was done without their consent. And the essence of the study was to determine whether penicillin could prevent syphilis infection and not just cure. So these men were infected with syphilis just to see whether penicillin would be able to prevent or not. Unfortunately, some of those who were infected never received medical treatment, and so some died, and some experienced other terrible health conditions. How about here in Nigeria? We have some businesses who manipulate data in marketing research so that their products can look better than they really are. And so they lure investors into investing their money into such business, which could eventually result to loss. We also have the issue of plagiarism, whereby students or lecturers in higher institutions copy some other people's project work, completed project work, and represent it as if it was their own without proper citation. And this kind of things violate intellectual honesty, and it also weakens trust in academic outputs. So these are some of the unethical issues in research and product development. I mean unethical issues in research. Now, let's look at unethical issues in product development, such as food production, because food is something we all consume every single day. And so when producers cut corners or when they ignore ethics, the consequences of their actions can be an immediate one, and it could be very dangerous. Now let's take, for example, uh, some producers who have been caught using detergents to speed up fermentation for fufu. Cassava producer trying to ferment fufu on time using detergents. Detergents are chemicals that are used for washing clothes. They are designed to wash clothes and not for human consumption. So you can imagine eating fufu that has traces of detergent in it. That's not just unethical, it's outright dangerous to health. And some people just think of the profit they can make and disregard consideration for human health. That's the extent people go in order to make money. Now, palm oil is another case. In order to make it look more reddish and attractive, some producers add industrial dyes. These dyes I'm talking about, they are not food grade dyes. Dyes that are meant for textile or plastics. And when you consume such chemicals, they can cause long-term health problems. So when you see palm oil that looks unnaturally bright, that looks so attractive to you, and it's like, come and take me, come and pick me, you should be suspicious so you won't be a victim. Then there is the issue of beans preservation with sniper. Farmers and even marketers use sniper to keep away weevils. But sniper is such a highly toxic chemical, it's poisonous. And so when it enters the food chain, it does not just kill insects, it can also harm humans. So eating beans preserved with sniper can lead to serious illness or even death. And it has led to death of many even in the past. And let's also talk about some producers who use bleach to whiten fufu. What do we use bleach for? It's a cleaning agent and not a food additive. And when such is put in food, it becomes unsafe, and it shows complete disregard for consumer health. And unfortunately, many producers just think of their pockets and the profit they can make without considering the harm their action will cause. So producers may think they are saving time. They may think they are making food to look better, or they are trying to reduce losses from their own side. But in reality, they are putting lives at risk. So when you hear ethical approval, don't think that it is a big order. It's just a shield. It's a shield that protects participants in research. It protects consumers in product development. It's a shield that protects society from harm, especially as it relates to food. Okay. Now, what do we mean by ethics? Ethics refer to a set of moral principles that govern individual behavior and decision making. And this emphasizes what is right or wrong, fair or unfair, just or unjust. Ethics are like the rules that we follow to be good people and to also make fair choices. With ethics, we are able to decide, should I do this? Is it fair? Will it hurt people? You're able to ask this kind of questions and provide positive responses. In the context of research or projects, ethics is about considering the potential impact the research or project will have on participants, the impact it will have on the environment, society, and other stakeholders that are involved. Therefore, to be ethical means to act in a manner that is consistent with the set principles that respect the rights of others, their welfare, and autonomy. It requires individuals to be mindful of potential harm or ensure that informed consent are sought before carrying out a research. And also, when there are private information shared, confidentiality should be maintained. And it also requires that research are conducted with integrity. Now, approval in the context of ethical approval means to obtain a formal endorsement or authorization from an ethics committee or what we call review board. And this approval indicates that the proposed research or project has actually been evaluated and it has been considered to meet the ethical standards set by relevant regulatory bodies or institutions. So approval may involve the submission of a detailed research proposal addressing those ethical considerations and outlining the steps taken in order to minimize risk and to ensure ethical practices. Earlier, we define ethics as a set of moral principles that guide people's behavior and decision making, that guides towards being good people. And we also said to be ethical means to act in a manner that is consistent with these principles. Now, we also went ahead to define what approval means as regards ethical approval, which refers to obtaining a formal endorsement from an ethics committee. Now, putting the two together, ethical approval means the process by which a research study is reviewed by an ethics committee or institutional review board to ensure that the research meets ethical standards and is a very important step in conducting research, particularly research that involve human participants or animals. And ethical approval is necessary to protect the rights, the welfare and well-being of individuals, even animals that are involved in the research. So ethical approval is essential to ensure that research is conducted ethically, respecting the rights, dignity, and autonomy of individuals or animals that are in. Let's look at some ethical considerations in food product development and utilization. In product development and utilization, ethical considerations mean the moral and responsible actions that companies and individuals should take when they are creating products or when they are marketing or using products. There are considerations, there are moral and responsible actions to be taken, and those are referred to as ethical considerations. And these considerations include consumer health and safety, environmental impact, having considerations for labor practices, and the responsible use of technology. These considerations ensure that products are developed and they are used in a way that people's rights will be respected and then fairness will be ensured and also contribute positively to society and the environment at large. When it comes to testing products on human, ethical approval ensures that participants are not exposed to unnecessary risk, and it also ensures that the benefits attached to the participation outweigh the potential harms, and it also ensures that the consent of participants are obtained. So it's unethical to exaggerate the benefit of a product. For example, if a fertilizer company claims their products will triple yields for farmers without evidence, this could mislead the farmer and harm farmers financially if it does not deliver. So it's not ethical to exaggerate the benefits of a product. Ethical approval in the context of product development and utilization refers to the process of obtaining permission from relevant regulatory bodies or research ethics committee to ensure that the development, the testing, and utilization of a product adhere to ethical principles that are set. And it focuses on the ethical considerations surrounding the use of a product or technology. And so ethical approval is required to ensure that the product is safe, to ensure that the product is effective, and it does not harm users or societies. For instance, pharmaceutical companies must obtain ethical approval before marketing or distributing drugs in order to ensure their safety and the efficacy of the drug. Ethical approval in the context of agricultural product development and utilization. In this context, ethical approval refers to the process of ensuring that agricultural innovation or products follow strict ethical standards, and it involves assessing whether the design and implementation comply with moral principles and guidelines that are set by regulatory bodies or institutional review boards. And the ethical approval takes into account the social and economic implications of agricultural product development and utilization. Why is ethical approval necessary? Since we know what is good, what is right, what is fair, what is just, why do we need to go for approval again? Well, ethical approval is necessary for products in order to ensure that they meet the required standards and guidelines, so there won't be cutting corners. And this is important because with ethical approval, consumers are protected and products are safe. Also, products are reliable and they are ensured that they do not harm the environment or violate any ethical principles. 2. Ethical approval involves evaluating a product's manufacturing process, the ingredients used, the sourcing of the ingredients, and the impact the product will have on the society at large is also evaluated. So you can see that ethical approval is important. With ethical approval also, factors such as human rights, animal welfare, environmental sustainability, and social justice are put into consideration. So ethical approval helps to prevent the production and sale of products that are harmful, products that are exploitative, or that are unethical in any way. With ethical approval in place, all of these are prevented. Also, by obtaining ethical approval, companies can demonstrate that their products are produced in an ethical and responsible manner. They are able to confidently express that they have followed the required standards and guidelines in product development. And so this can help build trust with consumers and also make their products to be unique, to be differentiated in an increasingly competitive market. With ethical approval, a measure of assurance for consumers that the product they are purchasing aligns with their personal values and beliefs can be provided. Consumers can be assured that what they are purchasing is actually what they desire to have, which aligns with their personal values and their beliefs. Ethical approvals also plays a crucial role in maintaining public trust in product development and utilizations. It showcases that the developers are committed to upholding ethical standards and are accountable for their actions. It means that product developers are intentional. They really want to uphold those standards. They don't want to cut corners, and a way to show that they don't want to do this and they are not doing it is to obtain approval for their product, ethical approval for their product. And that's another reason why uh, ethical approval is necessary for product development and utilization. Ethical approval also helps to maintain the credibility and validity of the findings of research findings by ensuring that the research methods, data collection and analysis are conducted in a rigorous and ethical manner. With ethical approval also, product development and utilization comply with relevant laws, regulations and policies, and therefore helps to avoid any legal implications and potential liabilities. Now, what's the procedure for obtaining ethical approval? What are the steps to take when an individual wants to get ethical approval? Number one thing is to identify the regulatory body. Determine the specific regulatory body responsible for approving and overseeing the development and utilization of agricultural products in Nigeria. And in this case, it is NAFDAC. NAFDAC is the primary regulatory body for development and utilization of agricultural products. Number two is to familiarize with regulations. You need to understand the relevant regulations, guidelines, and standards that has been set by the regulatory body. NAFDAC, for example, they have specific guidelines for the registration, approval, and use of agricultural products, and therefore it's important to follow these guidelines to ensure compliance and ethicality. Number three step is product testing and evaluation. You have to conduct thorough testing and evaluation of the agricultural products to ensure its safety, efficacy, and compliance with regulatory requirements. And this may involve laboratory tests, field trials, and clinical studies if applicable. The next step is to prepare necessary documentation. All necessary documentation required by the regulatory body must be prepared ahead, and this documentation may include product formulations, how the product is formulated, the process of manufacturing the product, safety data, efficacy data, labeling information, and any other specific requirements defined by the regulatory authority. They must be presented. 5. The fifth step is to submit application. Submit the application for ethical approval to the regulatory body along with the supporting documentation, and also there is an application fee to be paid, and this must be ensured. All required information is included according to the specific guidelines of the regulatory body, so that the approval or the application can be processed. Number 6 step is to review and evaluate. The regulatory body will review the submitted application and documentation to evaluate the ethical aspects, safety, efficacy, and compliance of the agricultural product. And it may involve inspections, audits, and they may even request for additional information if they are not included in the documents you have presented earlier. Next in the step is ethical approval decision. Based on the review and evaluation, the regulatory body will now make a decision on whether to grant ethical approval for the agricultural product. And this decision will be communicated to the applicant through a formal notification. Then, compliance with conditions. That's the 8th step. If ethical approval is granted, then the applicant must comply with any conditions or any requirements set by the regulatory body. The conditions may be labeling instructions, may be post-market surveillance, monitoring, or any other measures to ensure ethical and safe utilization of the product. Now, let's consider the development of a moringa tea production as an antioxidant. The steps outlined would apply in this case. Let's say we want to get ethical approval for the development of a moringa tea production. We have to follow the steps that we have highlighted earlier in getting ethical approval. So the regulatory body, NAFDAC, will need to be identified, and its guideline for agricultural products must be thoroughly understood. Then the moringa powder we need to undergo rigorous testing and evaluation, including laboratory studies and field trials, in order to establish the safety and efficacy of that product. There will also need for necessary documentation such as the formulation, the manufacturing process, safety data, and efficacy data would need to be prepared and submitted with the application for ethical approval to NAFDAC. And so this application will undergo a review and evaluation process, and this will be done by the regulatory body, and it may involve inspections and additional information requests. If the moringa tea meets the ethical and regulatory requirements, then NAFDAC will grant ethical approval. The applicant will then have to comply with any other conditions or requirements set by NAFDAC, including labeling instructions and post-market surveillance. Okay? So, what are the roles of regulatory bodies in ensuring ethical practices in product development and utilization? 1. They set standards, and these standards include ethical considerations such as human rights, consumer safety, environmental sustainability, and fair competition. And by establishing and enforcing these standards, regulatory bodies help ensure that products are developed and used in an ethical manner. That's one of the roles of the regulatory bodies. They set standards. Okay. Another role of the regulatory body is to review and approve the processes involved in product development. Before a product can be launched or utilized in the market, the regulatory bodies will have to review and approve the various processes involved in the development, such as clinical trials, manufacturing procedures, labeling, and marketing claims. And this regulatory approval will indicate that the product has been developed responsibly and can be safely used by consumers. Then they also, as their role, monitor and inspect. Regulatory bodies conduct regular inspections and monitoring, and this they do to ensure that companies comply with ethical practices throughout the product development and utilization life cycle. And this includes verifying adherence to safety standards, developers adhering to safety standards, quality control measures, and ethical guidelines. Through inspections and monitoring, regulatory bodies are able to prevent unethical practices such as the use of banned substances, deceptive advertising, or poor manufacturing practices, all which are common around this part of the world. We have so many unethical issues which are discovered day by day by NAFDAC, the regulatory bodies. Another of their role is enforcing compliance and imposing penalties. Regulatory bodies have the authority to enforce compliance with ethical practices and they also have the authority to impose penalties on companies that violate the established standard. There are different penalties, and it includes fines, revocation of licenses, products may even be recalled, or legal actions can be carried against the developers. And by holding companies accountable for unethical practices, regulatory bodies create a deterrent effect, and they also promote responsible behavior in product development and utilization. They also promote transparency as part of their roles. Uh, this transparency helps consumers make informed decisions and promotes ethical practices by discouraging misleading or deceptive tactics. They also collaborate with stakeholders. They collaborate with various stakeholders, including industry experts, consumer advocates, or other governmental bodies in order to develop and refine the ethical guidelines and standards. And when they do this, regulatory bodies are able to gain different perspectives from the stakeholders, and also to ensure that the ethical considerations are adequately addressed. Okay, um, now let's look at the responsibilities of manufacturers of agricultural products and agribusiness in ensuring ethical product utilization. What are the responsibilities of the manufacturers in order to ensure ethical product utilization? What are the actions that they need to take? Number one is transparency. Manufacturers and agribusinesses need to be transparent about the production process. They have to be transparent about the type of ingredients they use and any potential risk that is associated with their product. They need to open up with it, and this will help consumers to make informed decisions and also promote trust. Another responsibility of manufacturers is quality control. It is the responsibility of manufacturers to ensure that their products meet the quality standards and to ensure that the product are safe for consumption or use. And this can be done by conducting systematic testing, by carrying out inspections to avoid any potential harm to consumers. So another responsibility of manufacturer is to ensure sustainable practices. Manufacturers should prioritize sustainable practices in their production process, and it includes minimizing waste generation, reducing the use of harmful chemicals, and adopting environmentally friendly practices that will help to protect the ecosystems. It is also the responsibility to ensure ethical sourcing. Manufacturers and agribusinesses should ensure that their raw materials, such as agricultural products, are sourced ethically. And this means that they will avoid purchasing from suppliers who engage in deforestation, exploitation of labor, or those who use harmful pesticides. And when they do this, then they can be considered as sourcing ethically. It is also the responsibility of manufacturers to ensure food safety. They must ensure that their products are free from contamination and meet the highest food safety standards. This means that they have to implement proper hygiene practices, conduct regular inspections. They have to comply with food safety regulations and certification. As part of their responsibility also is animal welfare. They have to involved in animal-based, those who are involved in animal-based products, they have to ensure the ethical treatment of animals as very, very crucial. And it means providing proper living conditions, giving them access to, giving them food and water, and avoid any practices that cause unnecessary harm or suffering to animals. We have seen situations where even motorcycle are used to carry very large animal, pig, even they can even use it to carry cow, and these are
Big cow.
unethical practices, that do not take into consideration animal welfare, and that should be discouraged. So it's the responsibility of the manufacturer to do this. Also, social responsibility is one of the responsibilities of the manufacturer. Consumer education is the responsibility of the manufacturer. Manufacturers and agribusiness should actively educate consumers about the ethical considerations related to their products. They have to do a proper labeling, clear labeling that will provide necessary information about farming practices, and also that will promote sustainable consumption habits. All these are the responsibility of the consumer. Responsibility of the manufacturer to provide consumer with right information, to educate them about the product itself.